There was a time when all Harry Potter games looked like this, or this, or this, or this. And even though I wouldn't say that they were bad games, they were all still only based on the movies. There weren't any standalone offerings. So it didn't come as a surprise that when Warner Brothers announced that they were making an open world RPG that would be set in the Wizarding World, that people went insane. Fast forward 2 years from then, and the game was finally out. And well, it was for the most part met by quite a positive reception, and it was easy to see why. Compared to all the previous takes, this version had a lot more going for it. The majestic Hogwarts castle, an expansive recreation of Hogsmeade, the beautiful Scottish Highlands. But most of all, it was the first game of the franchise that finally gave players the opportunity to live out their childhood dreams. You could now attend Hogwarts as yourself. I mean, what kid hasn't dreamt of that? You were no longer playing as Harry, Ron or Hermione, you were playing as yourself. Riding this wave of nostalgia, Hogwarts Legacy would sell 22 million copies in 2023, becoming the best-selling game of the year. Do note that there were only 2 other games that had beat Call of Duty of this achievement in the past 15 years, and those were GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2, both being absolute juggernauts. Avalanche Software, who'd only ever created games like Disney Infinity or those that were designed for a particular film release, had just come along and done it with their very first attempt at an open world RPG. And well, the game did have its merits. Its combat was fantastic. I loved the way they implemented the spells and how to combine them. It felt really dynamic. I loved the parry system that they had in place to block other spells. I loved the ancient magic elements that they introduced. I was truly a fan of it all, which was actually quite surprising. I still remember the days leading up to the game, and this was something that a lot of people were very concerned about. A lot of us simply didn't see how you could make this unique style of combat feel good. And well, I can say with absolute certainty that they did it. I would even go as far as saying that I don't know how they could have done it any better. They did it really well. Something else that they absolutely blew everyone away with was the castle itself. Hogwarts was recreated beautifully. Exploring the castle just felt so very good, and I was at some points almost waiting for it to get old, but for me at least, it never did. Again, maybe this is just me, but when I watch the Harry Potter movies or read any of the books, I always have this cozy feeling that I get when it's just a cast spending time in the castle. They could be in the Great Hall or maybe doing something in their common rooms. Whenever they are just there exploring, I always get this feeling, and well, I can say that this game perfectly recaptured that. Exploring the Hogwarts castle in the game made me feel the exact same way. When you enter the Great Hall for the first time, or when you first go into your common room, you really feel like a student at the school. It's just so immersive. And the same can be said for Hogsmeade. If you don't know what Hogsmeade is, it's a village located next to Hogwarts that, according to the lore, is the only all-visiting village located in all of Britain. Hogsmeade is often mentioned in the books or seen in the movies as the place where a lot of kids from school spend time during their weekends or other holidays. They can go there for many reasons. Maybe they need a new wand from Ollivanders, maybe they need to pick up some school supplies. There's also Zonko's joke shop if they are in the mood for that. And if they just want to chill, well, the village even has 3 broomsticks where they can go with their friends to kick back on some butterbeers. And well, I'm happy to say that you can do all of this in the game as well. Hogsmeade, like Hogwarts itself, has been faithfully recreated, and the developers deserve a lot of praise for this, as they have rightfully received. But, and it pains me to say this, that's where all the positives end. The game, although created beautifully, just falls a bit too shallow in almost every other aspect. Before we move any further though, keep in mind that there will be spoilers moving forward, so consider this as your final warning. Getting straight into it, I found that the gameplay tended to get quite repetitive really quick. Not too long into the game, playing the main quests really does end up feeling like a chore, and I can think of two reasons why that might be: repetitive mission structure and the lack of enemy variety. Aside from a few exceptions, main quest missions in Hogwarts Legacy often end up feeling like something I would expect from side quests in other games. The mission structure is always the same: go into an area you're not supposed to, stealth or fight through enemies, crack the puzzles, the end. These missions felt more like dungeons that you would clear in an MMORPG than something that drives the story forward. Again, there were a few exceptions, but for the vast majority of them, the structure just felt very copied and pasted. Combine that with the lack of enemy variety, and it got far too old far too fast. The enemies in the game can be broken down into 7 different types: the humans, the goblins, the spiders, the mongrels, the trolls, and the sentinels. And although there are different subclasses for each of them that adds a hint of variety, I guess, it definitely wasn't enough to make the game any less boring. A strong example of this is the quests you do in the map chamber. To avoid revealing too much about the game, at some point in the main quest line, you will find a place called the map chamber, where you will need to complete a series of trials for reasons I can't reveal. These trials are parts of the main quest, so you can't just skip them. And at the end of each trial, you get a snippet of the story that you are uncovering about the past. And well, the trials were a pain to get through. Like I said about the missions before, they were all pretty much the exact same. You would end up in a dungeon, fight off sentinels, do some puzzles, and have a boss fight at the end. And although the boss fight was interesting, the process of getting there was simply far too tedious. The game's way of making missions interesting was, for the most part, just throwing swarms and swarms of enemies at you, and it just wasn't fun to play through. And it might have been okay to deal with as well if the story was at least engaging enough, but as you can probably already tell, I found the story to be quite lackluster, which is a shame because the story actually started off quite strong in my opinion, but by the time we got to the map chamber, it felt like the story had almost grinded to a halt. Do note, however, that this is a personal opinion, so if you are thinking of playing the game, your experience may vary. Now in the positives, I spoke about the castle and Hogsmeade and talked about how well they were made. Well, apart from those two exceptions, the world of Hogwarts Legacy is just so very empty. All the other villages surrounding the school have little to nothing going on there, with the rest of the Highlands being a whole lot of nothing as well. Beautiful to look at? Sure. But fun to play? Definitely not. And yeah, I know that's how the world is meant to be. Hogwarts is surrounded by grass fields and mountains, so people might say that there is not much that they could have done there. But I don't think that this would have been a problem if they just had interesting activities that could be done in the surrounding villages. I mean, they already have the other villages in place, so why not just add activities to spruce them up a bit as well? Or maybe even something like dynamic interactions. The world of Red Dead 2, for example, is also quite vast, and a lot of it is made of fields and forests, but it never felt empty. They would always have something interesting happening so that the player would never feel bored, whether it may be dynamic events that happen where an NPC is asking you for help, or maybe it's when someone tries to rob you. The world actually felt lived in. Come to think of it, I don't even remember seeing a student outside Hogwarts or Hogsmeade flying around. It felt like I was the only one living there. Now, it may be unfair to compare this to a Rockstar game. I mean, Rockstar has been doing it for over a decade, so it's obvious that they'd be a lot better at it. So I guess you guys can decide on what you think about that down below, so let me know in the comments. Moving on from the world, I remember seeing one of the first few trailers that were posted about the game, and at some point the trailer would cut to black and you just hear the player yell Vada Kedavra as a blast of green magic shoots out of their wand. That made me really excited. I thought that this meant that we can actually choose our own path. We can play as a good wizard or go the whole Voldemort route and become evil. And so it was very disappointing to see that basically none of your choices matter at all. It's like you can just blast Vada Kedavra near a teacher and they'll just be like, oh, don't do that here.
Oh dear, I'm afraid you've brought a bit outside of the curriculum.
Like, is that it? This is meant to be an unforgivable curse. It is said that if you use one of these curses, it means a one-way ticket to Azkaban. But then here you are, a 5th year student just using it whenever and wherever you like, and you don't even get so much as a slap on the wrist. Like, I don't understand what's the point of having the system if you're not gonna use it. Even later in the game, there is a point where you're meant to make a choice that will seemingly see you either becoming a good wizard or going down the evil path. You're given a choice to either contain the ancient magic or to use it for yourself. But well, they don't change pretty much anything at all. There are slight changes in the cutscenes here and there, but other than that, nothing at all. And I feel like this was such a big missed opportunity from the game. They could have done so much more with this concept. It almost feels like the game was meant to be a lot grander, but time and or money got in the way. This aspect was even tackled better by some of the past iterations in the world. A lot of the Harry Potter games of the past at least had a house point system, so there were some consequences to what you do. This one, however, doesn't even feature that. Finally, the game just felt lonely. Harry Potter is meant to be an adventure with friends. However, for most of this story, you're alone. There are a few missions with companions, but like I said in my problems with the world, for the most part, it felt like I was the only one living there. If there was a way that companions could join you in the main quest as well, rather than just the quests you do for them, the game would have been so much better in my opinion. So, in conclusion, Hogwarts Legacy, although fun at the start, seems to fall off quite a bit not too long after. I saw a comment while researching for this video actually, which I feel like sums the game up quite well. Hogwarts Legacy is no different from any Ubisoft game you have played in the last 15 years. The world, although good, is filled with meaningless side quests, a lackluster story, and mediocre minigames.